Hi, I'm Jonathan Weinberg, and this is Drawing with Fountain Pens. Before I begin today, I just want to thank some of the people who have been leaving comments. I've gotten some very encouraging notes, and it really makes a difference in terms of doing this. Also, please subscribe if you haven't. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and it really encourages me to make more videos. Today, I'm going to talk about a pen I just got that I think is particularly beautiful. This is the Pelikan M215. If you watch this channel, you know that I really like Pelikan pens. I mean, I could really collect them. And I was kind of surprised by this because I always thought, oh, it's nice looking. But in real life, in person, it's even more elegant. And it's a nice weight because of its material, and it has a very nice nib. So it's a real pleasure to review this one. So here is the Pelikan M215 rings, and I think it's extremely handsome. The simplicity of the ring design, I think, really is very elegant. And actually, I think it does sort of bring the pen into a more modern, gives it a more modern look, but it still has that classic look that is similar to so many of Pelikan's pens that go all the way back to the 1930s. Now, it can be kind of confusing with the different models of pens, particularly when you look at them in photographs, because they do look so similar. So I think right from the beginning, it's a good idea just to compare some of the sizes. The biggest Pelikan pen is the M1000, and you can see that that's really, really big. A more reasonably sized pen is the M800. These are the Souverain lines, and these pens have gold nibs and are quite expensive. The M215 line is a more affordable choice. It has a steel nib, so that makes it less expensive. All these pens, though, however, are piston fillers. Like everything else with pens, it depends on where you buy it. I think the list price of the M215 is $270, but I've seen it priced as low as $140, $170. So it obviously depends on where you buy it, and if you buy it from an authorized dealer or not. Now, these pens are much more expensive. They'll run you $600-700 list price. The M1000, I'm not sure what the price now is. The M800, certainly somewhere in the neighborhood of $500. Now, this is actually my favorite pen, the M800. It still seems to me to reign supreme in terms of the way it writes. So, that is something to keep in mind. But as I'm going to show in the writing sample, this M215 does write quite well, I think. So one of the things that differentiates these pens is the finial and the number of chicks. So when people are talking about that, they're talking about the Pelikan. Here, it's hard to see. This is get focused. You can see that there's a Pelikan, and then there's one chick here. And sometimes, let's see, I don't know, here you can see that there's one chick on my M1000. So it depends. That it's actually a way to identify the particular model or year sometimes by how many little baby birds there are on the Pelikan. Let's see if we can get this to focus again. Okay. So anyway, so that's a size difference between the M1000 and the 800. Now it gets a bit smaller. This is the M600, which is a little bit bigger, and is, it depends. This is all very Goldilocks, what size works best given your particular hand. And now we come down to the M400, which is exactly the same size as the M215, or there's the M205 line. This is an M200. And you can see that these are all the same size. And the difference here with the M400s is that they have gold nibs, and they also have this a little bit more of a trim, and they are still in the Sovereign line. Pelikan differentiates some more expensive pens, which are in there, as I say, the Sovereign line versus their classic line. So this is the Sovereign line, and this is the so-called classic M200 with this kind of marble blue, and that differentiates it from the Sovereign line with the stripes. And this is actually kind of translucent. You can actually see the ink inside, although not super clearly, but you can actually see into the pen. It's made out of a kind of celluloid, I believe, that allows you to do that. Now, the big difference with the M215 that makes it really such a great pen, I think, besides the fact that it looks so great, is that it is made with metal and brass. So it is heavier than the so-called classic, and that also goes for, there are a whole bunch of 200 pens and 205 pens. They come out with new models. Last year they came out with this, I think, very beautiful white and has this sort of gold luster to it that they added to this pen. It's a demonstrator. This is in the 200 line, but it is, because it's a demonstrator, it is considerably lighter, feels lighter to me, and less substantial than the 215. The 215 has a kind of weightiness to it. So even though it's a small pen, it feels substantial, and I think that's really terrific. The same goes for, this is the M205 Duo. This is supposed to be a highlighter pen. And you can see again that it's similar size, but this is a heavier pen. Now, one disadvantage of this heavier style with the rings is that you can't see into the barrel. So you don't really know when it runs out of ink, as you can with these other models, and that may be a problem for people. You can see, what's nice to see the demonstrators, you can see that it actually holds quite a lot of ink. I mean, I'm assuming that they have very similar pistons in it, and the barrel holds a similar amount of ink. So again, the big difference between the 400 line and the 200 line, I think, for people is the nib, the gold nib. So this is the steel nib on the M215, and this is the gold 14 karat nib on the M400. That's the big difference. But here's something that's cool about these pens, is the nibs easily unscrew. So this is the gold nib for the M400. If I wanted to, and I like this body so much that I might do that, is I could put this gold nib onto, this is a broad gold nib, I could put this onto the M215 and swap the nibs, and I might actually do that down the line. And it's true that even the M600 nib will fit. The M800 and the M1000, however, are considerably, their nibs are much bigger. The other thing I would say about nibs with these less expensive pens is that I don't think there's a huge difference between the steel nib and the gold nib. The steel, which in a way is interesting, the Pelikan nib on the steel nibs, I think, writes really smoothly, really beautifully. So I'm not sure if you need to step up to this. There's another pen to consider in these comparisons, and this is the M150, which is less expensive than the 200 line, and really is sort of the most affordable of these piston filler pens in this traditional form factor. And you can see that it's even smaller. I really think it's too small. I feel that the M200 and the 215 are a bit too small for my big hands. This is really small, but if you have small hands, you might want to go with this particular pen. All of these will exchange nibs, though, so that's interesting. So in terms of weight, this is 22.5 grams, which is not hugely heavy, but it is considerably heavier than, let's say, a Lamy Safari. And here, just to give you a sense, and here's the M200 in classic form, and it is 10 grams lighter. So it's really quite a considerable difference. Here is the M400 with the gold nib, and that's 14 grams. So you can see that the rings really does make a difference. And in terms of weight, here's the M800, which is 28 grams. So it's actually much closer to the M800. Size-wise, it's just shy of 5 inches. It's really 4 7/8, I would say, closed, posted. Now, all these pens, by the way, post really, really securely. This is 5 3/4 posted, and that compares, as you would expect. The 400, model 400 is almost exactly the same size, and you can see that it's almost exactly the same size. Now, one of the things that is fantastic about Pelikan pens, piston pens, and it should be true of all piston filling pens, is that when you post the pen, and they post securely, it does not turn the piston when you open and close the pen. The design is such that this comes down, tapers down, so when you turn this, ink doesn't come out of the pen. Now, there are some pens, I won't name them here, that have pistons, but they don't do that. And it makes it very dangerous to post them because you forget and you fiddle with the cap and the ink will come out. So here I will say this many times, but please, people who design piston pens that post, if it's going to post, you should design it in such a way that it doesn't turn the piston. That is a minimum of good pen design. You can tell by all the Pelikan pens that I've shown you that obviously I love Pelikan pens. I really collect them. They're among my favorites. And I have to say that this has become one of my favorite of all of their pens, just in terms of how it's designed. I just think it's incredibly elegant, simple, and in a kind of way obvious maybe, but I really don't see that many pens that just work as well as this does in terms of the way it looks. I've always loved the way they made the clip look like a pelican beak, but it's not, silly looking, or it just works. And I just really like this design. So in conclusion, I think this is a great pen. I am now going to do a writing sample, and then I'm going to follow it with a drawing that I made and a watercolored it, of these huge dahlias. They are called dinner plate dahlias that I've been growing this summer. And please subscribe if you've enjoyed this. Leave comments if you have ideas, other other pens that you think are nicer, or if you think this one's a great one, let me know. This is the Pelikan M215. This is a medium. This is Waterman Serenity Blue. This is sort of the classic color ink. I always really like it. This is Rhodia paper. And it's typical medium in terms of its line width. Very smooth. Pelikan nibs on their moderate price and expensive pens are fantastic. It doesn't have line variation though. And that would be different if you want interested in a pen that has line variation and you want a vintage pen, you might try a Pelikan 140, which you can get used. Some of the Pelikan 120 metal steel pens have actually a bit of line variation. So you can see that it's quite wet, very smooth. So for my hand, it's still a little small. I would like it if the section were a little longer, a little wider. This would be the perfect pen, and that's why if I jump up to the Pelikan M600 and then finally the M800, I like it better. But it is fairly comfortable, much more comfortable than the M200 because of the weight of the pen. It just feels more substantial. I wish it was a little fatter. That would make it fine. The length is fine. It's just a little too narrow for me. So that's something that is, has to do with this line of pens. And obviously, for a lot of people, this is perfect because Pelikan has been making pens this size for a long time. For people who like to do reverse writing, you can actually get reverse writing, and it's quite smooth. So it's a very nice pen. Strongly recommend it. And it will be one of the pens that I will go. It's will be one of my go-to pens, I think, for going forward.